funny Freestyle.
Siyakwamukela eNyuvesi yase-Free State.
Situated in the heart of South Africa, my university is a creation of the past, the present, and the future. Across our 3 campuses, 7 faculties have been home to some of the most magnificent minds. Everything we do is rooted in our values of excellence, innovation and impact, accountability, care, social justice, and sustainability. We have been changing the world for more than a century. We continue to pave the way and inspire a fresh stream of knowledge and skill to follow in the footsteps of our scholars and alumni. We hunger for knowledge that will help us to be better and to do better. Our facilities encourage excellence, pulling us towards the light of new insight and ways of applying what we know. We lead by example, advocating sustainability in everything that we do. While we are making a current impact, we are also steering towards the future with the knowledge and skills we need to take the lead. The next years will be especially significant in our growth as our Vision 130 unfolds, which will peak in 2034 when the University of the Free State celebrates 130 years of existence. Vision 130 is our strategic intent to reposition the university for 2034. Join us on this journey. Together, we will go further.
Trong trong Badisa, trong Rebembo, Bukella. Speaker, Emeritus Justice of the Constitutional Court of South Africa, Justice Albie Sachs, Vice Chancellor and Principal, Professor Hester C. Klopper, members of the University Executive and Senior Management, Justice of the Constitutional Court of Zambia, Justice Kenneth Mulife, Full-time Commissioner of the South African Human Rights Commission, Commissioner Tsep, Treasurer General of the African Network of Constitutional Lawyers, Ms. Anyango Yvonne Oyiki, the Dean of Law, in his absence, Professor Serge Kamga, Professor of Law, Department of International Law and Jurisprudence, as well as Vice Chancellor of the University of Ilorin in Ilorin City, Kwara State in Nigeria, Professor Abdul Wahab Olusapo Egbewole. Professor of Law in the Center for Human Rights and Director of the Institute of International and Comparative Law in Africa in the Faculty of Law of the University of Pretoria, Professor Charles Manga Fombad. Associate Professor of Law in the Department of Public Law of the University of the Free State, Professor Catherine Namakula. Professor of Law in the Department of Public Law and Jurisprudence and UWC Research Chair in Gender Transformation and World Making in the University of the Western Cape, Professor Karen van Marley. Colleagues from the Faculty of Law, as well as from other faculties in our beautiful university. Project Director of the Albie Collection and Chair of the Albie Sachs Trust, Miss Vanessa Rose September. My name is Kanya Motsabi. It is my singular and distinct honor to be Program Director this evening, and I will try to set the scene. Please allow me to begin. The Albie Sachs Prestige Lecture is a partnership between the Albie Sachs Trust for Constitutionalism and the Rule of Law, ASCAROL for short, and on the other hand, the Faculty of Law of the University of the Free State. The lecture is held annually in the name and spirit of Albie. For this purpose, Justice Sachs has generously agreed to associate his name with us here at the University of the Free State in relation to the spirit of his life's work and his commitment to constitutionalism, his commitment to human rights, and his commitment to the rule of law. Established under a 5-year agreement to stage this very lecture, this lecture, the Albie Sachs Lecture, is a centerpiece of the Dean's Prestige Lecture Series. The lecture supports the University of the Free State's ambition, recorded in Vision 130 of the university, to be a research-led, student-centered, and regionally engaged university that contribute to development and social justice through the production of globally competitive graduates and knowledge. Therefore, distinguished guests, the lecture and partnership with Ascarol nourishes, enables, and propels our very highest ambitions, aspirations, and ethical commitments. It makes us indeed exceptionally and superlatively proud. The first Albie Sachs Prestige Lecture in 2024 was a festival, if I might use that word. A lovely experience, rejuvenating, defined by an evocative title that Albie and I have just been discussing together with Vanessa and Prof. Rhoda. And full of deep meaning and significance. The title of the 2025 lecture is just as evocative and inspiring. The promise of its experience is attractive and arresting. Normally, distinguished guests, at this point, I would hand over to the leader of this faculty, Dean Kamga, but the Dean can unfortunately not be with us this evening despite his immense and intense desire to be present. The reasons will be covered by one of our Vice Deans, Dr. Jacques Mathieu. Before that, and perhaps there is another before, which I will explain in a moment, or try to explain. Before that, I'm reporting that I do not propose to interpose myself as program director between the series of speakers that we have this evening. We're looking for a degree of seamlessness. So, I kindly request each speaker to immediately surrender the podium to the next speaker in the order of the program, of course. Back to Dr. Mathieu. Dr. Mathieu, it gives me great pleasure to invite you shortly in your capacity as Vice Dean and as the person who's helped us to steady the ship in the sudden and unplanned absence of our main leader. I'm rather pleased, Vice Dean Mathieu, to invite your welcome remarks, which I understand reflect your own inspiration. And we are happy also, though, that you, Dr. Mathieu, can represent our admired leader, Dean Kamga. The moment is also opportune for me to thank both Vice Deans of the faculty, Professor Temeshni Dean, and you again, of course, Dr. Mathieu, for your leadership in the faculty. I especially wish to thank you, Dr. Mathieu, for standing in for the Dean, as I've mentioned, and for keeping things moving at this difficult time. At this point, distinguished guests, I am advised, my instructions, as the advocates like to say, is that the musical surprise that Serge Kamga planned for you should not come later, but rather right now. Thank you. And to that end, it's my great pleasure, it's my privilege to share with you by inviting to the front Ms. Bayanda Mkize, who I think is already an LLB graduate of this university, or very close thereby, to perform a musical item for you. And I suggest that I'm sharing it with you not because I own it, but because I've heard some of her work before, and it is superb. with that, over to you.
There's an old friend that I once heard say something that touched my heart, and it begins this way. Sanbonani. Hi. Today I'm performing a song written by Sam Cooke, and it's just about being optimistic about the future, regardless of the hardships and the systematic disadvantages. I was born by the river in the little tent. Whoa, and just like that, a river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. There, beyond the sky, it's been a long time coming, but a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Said I'll go to my brother, and I'll say, brother, brother, help me, please. Oh no. But when I go to my brother, oh, he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. There's been times that I thought I wouldn't last for long, but somehow I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Oh, yes, it's gonna come. Change is gonna come. Thank you.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow. I'm definitely not going to sing. But let's give her another round of applause just to appreciate her and thank her. Okay, good evening, everyone. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to this very special occasion hosted by the Faculty of Law, the prestige lecture by Emeritus Constitutional Court Justice Albie Sachs and the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the University of the Free State and the University of Ilorin in Nigeria, represented here by its Vice-Chancellor, Professor Wahab Ekpawole. The program director has already introduced me. I'm Jacques Mathieu. I'm the Vice Dean for Learning, Teaching in the Faculty of Law. And tonight, for me, it's an honor and a humbling responsibility to stand before you on behalf of our Dean, Professor Serge Kamga, who is unfortunately unable to be with us due to the recent passing of his mother. On behalf of the faculty, we extend our heartfelt condolences to Prof. Kamga and his family. Our thoughts and our prayers are with them during this time of loss. Before I proceed, I do want to stand on the protocol established by our program director, and while a formal vote of thanks will follow later in the evening, I would like to take a moment just to acknowledge a few of the distinguished guests and stakeholders that are here with us tonight. Professor Klopper, our Vice-Chancellor and Principal, she will hopefully join us shortly following another engagement. Professor Anthony Aurora, our Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic, who will deliver the vote of thanks later. Of course, Justice Albie Sachs and Mrs. Vanessa September, whose presence here tonight honors us deeply. Vice-Chancellor Professor Wahab Ekpawole, who has traveled all the way to be with us for this week's Winter School on Constitutionalism in Africa. Professor Charles Fombat, widely regarded as the father of comparative constitutionalism, will also deliver a keynote at our Winter School. Professor Tsepo Madlongozi, mentor and longtime friend of Prof. Kamga, who will lead a panel discussion later this week. Of course, Professor Karen van Marle, another keynote speaker and contributor to this week's seminar on 3 decades of reconciliation in South Africa, hosted by the Free State Center for Human Rights. And then, of course, Mr. Kanya Mochabe and his team for bringing together this event and the Winter School. To all our colleagues, our students, and members of the legal fraternity in Bloemfontein, thank you for being here tonight. This evening marks a momentous occasion in the life of our faculty. At our 80th anniversary this year, we do so under the leadership of the UFS's first female Vice-Chancellor and the faculty's second Black Dean. It is a year of milestones. In celebration of these, we host the 2nd annual Prestige Lecture by Justice Sachs, the signing of our MOU with the University of Ilorin, and the 1-week UFS ANCL Winter School on Constitutionalism in Africa. As you would have seen in the program, the evening will be divided into 2 parts. We will have the Prestige Lecture first, and then later the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding. Just a brief word on the lecture. After Justice Sachs joined us in May 2024 for a powerful human rights celebration, students and colleagues alike asked for more. We approached Justice Sachs and Mrs. Vanessa September with a proposal for collaboration. That proposal became a partnership, and together we established a yearly Dean's Prestige Lecture in support of our shared commitment to promoting justice and the rule of law. Should Justice Sachs ever be unavailable, a nominee from the Trust will deliver the lecture. Last year, we signed the MOU formalizing this collaboration, and so tonight we welcome back not only a justice, but an activist, a visionary, and a national treasure. Justice Sachs, you are a hero to many, and we thank you deeply for being here once again. The timing of this lecture tonight could also not be more relevant. Across the continent, we continue to witness a wave of constitutional amendments aimed at extending presidential terms and even unconstitutional changes of government. In contrast, South Africa's constitutional democracy remains anchored in the principle of accountability, something Justice Sachs will illuminate through his reflections on the role of the courts in upholding constitutionalism. With that, thank you again for being here this evening. We look forward to an evening of inspiration, reflection, and engagement. And I'm now going to hand over to Ms. September. Thanks.
There's a little video that somebody's going to play that I'm going to talk to. It's only a minute long, and in the moment while they... Oh, no. it's too late. Just to remember Professor Kanga and to send our condolences. Sorry, can you play it from the beginning, please? Would you mind? It's important. Sorry, technology catches us at any moment, just when we think we've got it all under control. Thank you. Thank you very much to the tech team for helping us play that. 2 years ago, I was faced with a question, what to give a man when he turns 90. A man who's never celebrated a birthday before ever in his life, partly because his parents didn't know their birthdays and they had to flee Lithuania. And so they never celebrated birthdays, and as a result, their two sons, Albie and his younger brother, never celebrated a birthday. But he's nevertheless lived an extraordinary life. So, you know, what to give this man who went to school during World War II, who matriculated when he was 15, finished his first degree at university when he was 17, practiced law at 21. Well, before that, having had his first jail stint at 17. What did you do when you were 17? He was in jail at 17. He practiced law at 21, defending people mainly fighting against the apartheid laws. He was twice detained in solitary confinement, tortured, went into exile. He married, had 2 beautiful sons. The sons now have children of their own. He went to Mozambique and was blown up by a car bomb, which was placed in his car by the South African security forces. He survived, having lost an arm and the sight in one eye. And he decided that what he wants to do is to start working on a new constitution for South Africa, and started the first drafts of the Bill of Rights. When Nelson Mandela was released from prison, Albie, amongst others, returned from exile and started the negotiation process that led to the terms for establishing our first democratic South Africa, in which all persons are considered equal, united in our diversity. Words from the preamble, which I insisted to read last year, but I won't make you do again this year. At our first democratic elections, after that, he was appointed as one of the first 11 justices on the Constitutional Court. Some of you might know this, but I know there are many guests in the room, so I'm doing this for their benefit. And then he's serving on this court for 15 years, upholding the rights he gave his right arm and the sight in his eye for, and of course other people gave their lives for. And he married again and had a child at 71. It's possible when you're a man, maybe not when you're a woman. Since his term at the court came to an end, he's been busier than ever, traveling all over the world, speaking about the rule of law, which is the remit for our engagement with you, social justice, human rights, the values of democracy, and constitutionalism, the theme of the winter school here, all issues under a lot of threat in the world today. And in 2022, at a very glamorous event at the New York Public Library, he was turned into an icon by Amal and George Clooney, yes, George Clooney, with their Albie Award given to him by none other than Michelle Obama. Now, he's not interested in material things, money, flashy cars, jewelry, the silks and trappings of wealth, but of course he likes to be comfortable. He believes that he has everything, everything he needs: good health, a happy life, active mind and body. He does Pilates 3 times a week and rows once a week. So, what do you give such a man? when he turns 90. And Albie, I actually realized we've given you time. Time to share stories and reflections with people. Well, this is what he does. He shares stories and reflections with people who want to hear from him and want to connect with him, like we are doing here with the University of the Free State through this collaboration with the Trust in Yourselves, and what brings us here today through this prestigious lecture for Albie to inspire young people to engage with the world around them, to encourage them not to be idle and to be satisfied with the status quo, but to use their constitutions all over the African continent, to use it as a tool to achieve a better society. So time, Albie, that is what we brought you. We captured all your stories, all your reflections on the impact of art and beauty in the world, the tick-tock ticking of your legal mind when you deliberate on a case and how you reach a judgment, your writings in 14 books and more about life, love, and art, and there are more coming. Is at the moment busy with no less than 3 books with collaborators, and so young collaborators. And so we've had to think about how do we capture this whole life and present it in a cohesive way. And last year we gave you a little inkling, but now it's actually a reality. Here is the proof, and I'll explain what this is. We defined 5 themes through which to tell the story of Albie's life, and it's been spooling here, a curated conspectus of the life, love, law, literature, and laughter of Albie Sachs. Any lawyers in the room who can say what is a conspectus? Okay, even the professors? It's an overview. A judge would make a decision based on the conspectus of a case, would make a determination. So it's an overview, and we thought, should we use a much more accessible term, or should we make the whole collection, even from its naming, an educational experience? And then the byline to this collection is the heart of a freedom fighter. So that is what you've seen here behind you. I want to take you behind the scenes a little bit to explain what you've seen. The little stick monarchy, you'll come back a few times. Sorry. The stick man comes from George Clooney, when he made a little drawing about what the Albie Award would look like. Typical drawing on a tissue serviette, a drawing with one long arm and one short arm, recognizing the imperfections, but nevertheless, there's the monarchy on the bottom right-hand corner. There's a little statuette that looks like him, a statuette like you would expect people who get the Oscars to get, but the Oscar has no relevance to a person. But we wanted to be sure that when people look up who the Albie is, since George and Amal Clooney were so determined to name it after him, we wanted them to land somewhere, and hence the Albie collection. So this stick man became our key logo. You'll notice the yellow heart. How many people do you know who are recognized by their first name all over the world? Can you name a few? Elvis, Beyonce, Sting, Albie. We have our own rock star. And accidentally, when Albie signed his name for this business card that was made long ago, the dot on the I ended up looking like a heart. So we took the heart and we put it inside the stick man. We made it bigger, and we made it yellow for love and friendship, and we placed it inside the stick man to breathe life into him. And then we made it pump. And then we recorded Albie's heartbeat, which you heard in the beginning. And the heartbeat pumps in unison with this yellow heart, the heart of the freedom fighter. Then you'll see the font, the Albie's written in a font which we created with his handwriting. Albie has a very distinctive handwriting, sort of schoolboy, standard 2 handwriting. And when he was blown up, he lost his writing hand. He was right-handed. And when he learned to write again, the writing came out the very same way. And he learned that your writing is in your head. It's not in your hand. Your hand is just the tool through which it is expressed from your head. The shapes which you see, they come out of the spaces, the loops inspired in the font. The loops of the font inspired the shapes that form the graphic toolbox. So we extracted the shapes between the lines, and we place images in them So you don't see images like you see in a PowerPoint presentation or square. We locate the images inside these shapes. Images, unbelievable amount of images of Albie's life recorded over time. The colors of the images, of the shapes, reflect the radiant array of the colors in Albie's life, from his artwork to the shirts he wears, glorious shirt he's wearing tonight, and the art he loves. And then the sound. When Albie was in solitary confinement, the one element that the police could not limit him from experiencing and control their access to was that of sound. Now, in jails, most of the sounds you hear are hard, metallic, metal on metal sound, very hard, very aggressive, nothing soft about it, nothing grows. But he could communicate with other fellow prisoners through sound and whistling. So the whistling that you hear, and you'll hear it again this evening, we won't play it for you right away, is the Dvorak Going Home theme. Do you know it? Anyone in the room? Whistle with me. Okay, you got it. So we use this whistle because it has a particular story, and Albie might relate the story at some point. And then space. We wanted to leave a lot of clear space in the collection, generous space, not too much information to clutter the mind, to clutter the page, to make it visually noisy, in a way quite similar to how I've designed our home. I'm an architect first, next to the sea in Cape Town, to allow visitors room to explore and imagine and dream within the pages of the collection, much like Albie has always been a dreamy boy. So this gift, Albie, that we made for you is actually a gift to everyone in the room and everyone who visits the collection and wants to spend time with you now and beyond the now. So we hope that all of you will explore the collection. I have a stack of these cards here, which we will hand out during the course of the evening. And when you scan the QR code on this card, it takes you directly to the collection. And we hope you'll all keep it as bookmarks in your most precious books, and that whenever you feel the need to be inspired, that you have a look at the Albie collection. So I'm going to leave you with this. Thank you. And the feeling, of course, is that we want you to feel like you've sat at Albie's feet like you are doing here this evening and listening to him, because we have many, many people who come from all over the world to do just that. And so now I'm going to ask the team up there to play us a second video, and at the end of the second video, Albie will address you. Thank you for your attention.
The purpose of the Albie collection, as I see it, is to reach out to all the people out there in the world who are dreamers like me, want a better world, and maybe even to people who are in a bit of despair about the world, to see positive things can emerge from so much negativity and so much harm and so much hatred and bitterness. Beauty can emerge. It happened in my life. It was there, I was available for it. Almost 90. That's a lot of years, and I look back, I can't believe my own life. I'm a soft, quiet person, watching the world go by. I break up fights, I don't get into fights, but I've been blown up, I've been tortured, I've been stateless for many years. I helped to write the country's constitution. I've become a judge. I've enabled same-sex couples to express their love in marriage through court judgments. I've helped to abolish capital punishment in our country together with my colleagues on the Constitutional Court. Wow, what was it like under apartheid in South Africa? What was it like struggling? What was it like to imagine yourself as a revolutionary? What was it like becoming convinced about the importance of multi-party democracy? What was it like to love? What was it like to be involved with the arts movement? What was it like to write books? What was it like? What was it like? What was it like all the time? And to be able to share that, with other people out there, also dreaming of a better world, also angry about the pain in the world, also wanting to make the world a better place. And maybe even for the people who are in such despair because there's so much pain and ugliness and cruelty in the world, beauty can grow out of the ugliness. It has to grow out of the ugliness. We have to turn the swords into plowshares. And maybe that's been what my life has been about, and that's something worth sharing. A beautiful, wonderful team of creatives have come together. They found enough to make excellent, thoughtful, intimate storytelling, sometimes even richer than the actual experience in the very telling of it, the beautiful way that works of art can capture something and give it a dimension without losing the something, but adding something to it. And that's what's emerged, as I feel, as I see it, in the Albie collection. Life is so full of vitality and fun and surprise and contradictions. It's got to be conveyed, and it's got to be conveyed even in the storytelling of judges. And maybe the writing I've done that will last the longest, writing as a member of the Constitutional Court of South Africa, dealing with issues like capital punishment, wow, same-sex marriages, wow, prisoners' rights to vote, wow, the rights of the homeless, cameras in court, one issue after the other issue after the other issue, affecting the life of the nation. What does it mean to be a human being in the late 20th and early 21st century? You go to the law reports, boring, 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 boring. And yet, even as a judge, your heart beats to deal with the issues, to get it right, to listen to colleagues, to say something that's meaningful, not just to the litigants, but to the world, to young law students, to scholars, to other judges, to the press, to parliament, to other people exercising power, writing for them. A wonderful form of storytelling you have as judges, but such an exciting experience to get it across in ways that I haven't seen before, that I hope will be useful for people not only in South Africa, not only for lawyers, not only for judges, but for human beings, all of us as human beings, wherever we are in the world, and particularly very much for lawyers all over the world. The result, 65 cases, 15-minute excerpts of film, the transcripts. I'm engaged with a very brilliant young lawyer called Tandy Matthews. She's questioning me, pushing me, dealing with my work, the judgments I wrote on the Constitutional Court. Somebody said, Albie, your life, tell your story, literally in your own voice. It's an interesting story. And the result? 30 episodes telling the story of my life from my earliest memories until quite recently. I was born into struggle. Even my name, Albie, I was named after Albert Nzula, who was a communist. He was a trade union leader, one of the first African trade union organizers who died not long before I was born. My parents had enormous admiration for him, so they called me Albert. I didn't know it was an unusual home, because where you grow up seems to be normal to you. But I remember very vividly my mom, Albie Sachs, born Ginsberg, saying to my little picky brother, Johnny, aged then about 18 months, and Albie now aged about 2.5, 3. Tidy up, Uncle Moses is coming. And Uncle Moses wasn't Moses Cohen or Kantarovich, it was Moses Kotani. He was the General Secretary of the Communist Party, and my mom had enormous admiration and affection for him, and she was his typist. So I grew up in a home where it was quite normal to see a white woman showing great respect and affection for an African man who was a boss. And to me, that was normal. And that world outside, where people were treated in a very discriminatory way because of the skin color, just seemed quite absurd to me. The biggest surprise for me in creating the collection was the timeline. So your eye immediately is drawn in to these different images of the young Albie, the older Albie, Albie the lawyer, Albie involved in art, Albie in different kind of connections. And then the rather pedantic dates on the left side, easy to follow. And on the right-hand side, interesting things that happen with lots of white in between. Everything is sort of floating so that life isn't a kind of rigid experience looking a bit like an ancient skeleton of a reptile that you see in a museum. Life by its very nature is free-floating and endless and in flow all the time. And there's a vitality and an energy that captivated me as an anti-timeline person completely. Finally, we come to the part where the subject has to be either very vain or very dead. I'm not very dead, so I'm very vain. It's quotations, quotes from Albie Sachs. People are always looking for quotes for after-dinner speeches, for essays, for a whole range of different things. People are very welcome to use quotes from me, and it's wonderful to think ideas are in circulation in that way. One of the big themes of my life has been my interest in art, all kinds of art, but very much visual arts. I'm useless, I can't paint, I can't draw, but I can look, I can see. And the artistic vision has been part and parcel of my being. Places I've been in, Constitutional Court, big art collection, involved in mural movements in different countries. And the Zeitz Moka Museum of Contemporary Art in Africa in Cape Town is going to have an exhibition called Spring is Rebellious on Albie life in art. It's so exciting preparing for that. To complement the exhibition, the director, Sarah Govea, is making, to be quite honest, I find it quite bewitching and extraordinary, very arty feature documentary on my life in art, which will parallel the exhibition at the Zeitz Moka Museum. In the meanwhile, we've made a teaser for the documentary. Some people remember their first kiss I remember the first time I went to jail. I was 17 years old. We dreamt of war of liberation. We saw war as something creative, transformatory, liberatory, emancipatory. But even emancipatory war is ugly. War is ugly. Mozambique, 1988. At a time of civil war, beautiful art has been created, and I'm blown up. The paradox of our lives is that we're fighting with all our passion to create a boring society. The idea of the judge being passionless, cut off, pure reason, without compassion, without emotion, without feeling, without connection with the world, is completely false.
Our understanding of art is very, very close to law because law permeates the entire society.
When law is used for purposes of oppression, it's telling a terrible story, a horrible story, a negative story, a dark story. Normally the projection is that art is not reasonable and law is not passionate. So what's the purpose of the Albie collection? As I see it, it's to reach out to everybody out there in the world who's dreaming that the world can be a better place. And maybe even to people in despair about the world. There's so much ugliness, so much pain, so much horror that human beings inflicting other human beings, to find positivity, to find something emerging from the ugliness and the conflict, that beauty can always emerge, that hope can always be there. That's been my life. It's been my actual experience. And maybe it can even encourage people to find something inside themselves that can, if not blossom, at least grow and flourish a little bit. It's very wonderful for me to be here. I'm going to start with our colleagues from Nigeria. A lovely, beautiful, wonderful, wonderful surprise. A Pan-African surprise. And I'm old enough to even remember when Nigeria became an independent state. There was such joy in South Africa. We're living under apartheid. And when I was at school, the map of Africa was red for the British colonies and green for the French colonies, and a little bit of mauve for Belgian Congo, and a little bit of orange and gold for the Portuguese colonies. And the whites thought, we're here forever, 1,000 years, white supremacy. And then Ghana was the first. And then I think Guinea came quite soon afterwards. Terrible fighting in Kenya, bitter war in Algeria, and then Nigeria, independent country. And we saw it was bringing our freedom closer and closer. And you gave us huge support. The countries of Africa that gave us the biggest support were our neighbors, the frontline states. Paid a huge price, a terrible price, for our liberation, our freedom here. But there's that hinterland up north, and many of our students studied. Our first law clerk, Rabbi Maputo, studied in Lagos. Other forms of political support, international support. So that's my first thank you. Then, later stage, we haven't even achieved our democracy here, but we have a great writers' conference. And the greatest writer of our continent in early 1990s, Chinua Achebe. And I had the joy and pleasure of meeting him and shaking his hand with my left hand and having lovely discussions with him. At a later stage, another great writer, Wole Soyinka, with a big white hair. And you didn't pick a fight with him, because if you did, you lost. A brilliant speaker. Coming from Nigeria to South Africa, Kole Omotoso. He was our friend. He came many times to dinner to our house. His daughter studied at the University of Cape Town architecture with Vanessa. And what was amazing, and maybe Nigerians don't know this, South Africans can remember that time when we had an advertisement that wanted to end up with an African face, a grave, serene, confident voice saying, Yebo go go. And we couldn't find one in South Africa. We took one from Nigeria. I had the pleasure of visiting your country, the pleasure and discomfort during military rule. And I discovered there's only one advantage of military rule, no other advantages. The only advantage is if you're looking for a nice hall to have a meeting, you have an empty parliament that you can use. And later on, a more delightful pleasure meeting your President Obasanjo, who also gave so much support to us in Southern Africa, and at times when it really, really, really mattered. I remember it was so interesting speaking to him. He wasn't this important president that you had to stand up when he came into the room and worry all the time. He had a very beautiful, elegant top and trousers and bare feet. I was a little bit surprised, I can't imagine Mandela being barefoot. And interesting, friendly, warm conversation. So to be linked this evening with yourselves and to feel the link with the University of the Free State is a matter of great joy and great pleasure to me. So thank you very much. Can we all welcome? So the title of my presentation last time was Who Wrote the Constitution and how can an unelected body of 11 people overturn the decisions of a democratically elected parliament? I think that's a question could be asked in Nigeria. It's asked here, and I'm not going to repeat that lecture. The lecture tonight is, yes, you can, Mr. President. No, you can't, Mr. President. How the Constitutional Court dealt with holding presidents in South Africa accountable. And the idea of giving that lecture came to me when Vanessa and I went to the United States earlier this year. I didn't discuss anything about law in the United States. That's for the American people to work out themselves. But I did discuss how we in South Africa utilized our Constitution in dealing with issues which are issues all over the world, on our continent, in other continents. The whole balance between constitutionalism, certain established principles, procedures, values, ways of looking at the world on the one hand, and the exercise of power by those who've been chosen one way or another by the people, or chosen or stayed on in power on the other. And I'll begin with February the 14th, 1995. Now, February the 14th, some of you will know, is what day? Valentine's Day. It was more than Valentine's Day for 11 of us, sitting in green gowns. It was the day we were inaugurated as judges of South Africa's first constitutional court. My heart was going boom, 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 boom. And in unison with my colleagues, boom, 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 boom. It wasn't quite four-part harmony. We did have two women on the court. And Nelson Mandela was presiding over the occasion. He made a most eloquent speech. So we're now in temporary accommodation. We had the old parliament, same building, slightly new occupants after general elections. We had the union buildings for the presidency, slightly new occupants. We didn't have a building for the Constitutional Court. We couldn't say you can't have constitutional judgments until we get our building. So we had temporary accommodation. And now we're sitting in that tiny room, crowded, sense of how momentous it is. And Mandela says, the last time I was in court was to find out if I was going to be sentenced to death. Today, I attend the inauguration of South Africa's first constitutional court on which our democracy depends. And one by one, we sworn in. And we heard Pius Langa taking the oath in isiZulu, Johan Kriegler in Afrikaans, Arthur Chaskelson affirming in English. One by one, different languages of the country being used, and we sworn in. And we were so pleased that Nelson Mandela was there. He epitomized the resolution, the vision, the change, the heart, the spirit, the intelligence that had given us the new constitution. And the world loved him, and we loved him. And how did we show our gratitude? 6 months later, we struck down 2 proclamations by this wonderful human being, Nelson Mandela. 27 years in jail. And what does this cheeky constitutional court do? Strikes down 2 proclamations. And they were good proclamations. They dealt with the first democratic local government elections in South Africa. Not just the national elections that created the parliament that was going to write the new constitution. Local government, where so much matters. For the first time, we were going to have black, white, brown, all voting as equals, all on the councils. And Parliament said, Mr. Mandela, Mr. President, we don't have time to do all the arrangements, the finance, the security, the secret ballot, the counting. You do it. This is all practical, technical stuff. Please issue some proclamations. And he issued the 2 very, very good proclamations. But there was opposition from the National Party. It had been the old party of apartheid. They now governing in the Western Cape, and they objected to certain aspects, and it comes up to the Constitutional Court. And we struck down those 2 good proclamations. Why? Because the Constitution says the lawmaking authority in South Africa belongs to Parliament. Parliament can't give over its basic power to pass the laws to any individual, not even to the president, not even to Nelson Mandela. And there are good reasons for that. Parliament has procedures, public participation, multiple readings. If you ask somebody to issue regulations, they get a team and they publish it. There's no public involvement participation. It's very dangerous. In Germany, when the Reichstag gave Hitler power as Chancellor to pass the laws, that was the end of democracy. So how did Mandela respond? We were a little bit anxious. It was a majority decision with multiple different judgments, but great majority in favor of that decision. He went onto television and he said, when I issued these proclamations, I acted on legal advice that I was entitled to do so. I now accept that that advice was wrong. And I, as president, must be the first to show respect for the Constitution as interpreted by the Constitutional Court. For me, that was such a joyous day. Now, we all know April the 27th, 1994, the day of our first democratic elections. Even I don't know the day in which Nelson Mandela went on TV, but to me that day was as important as the day we voted 20 million people for our new parliament to draft our new constitution. Because the day we moved from being a political democracy to becoming a constitutional democracy. And once Mandela had set the example of accepting the decision, then afterwards, if it's the Postmaster General or the Minister of Home Affairs, the Constitution. So the score, Constitution 1, President Mandela 0. Next case, the Hugo case. Mr. Hugo was serving a sentence of imprisonment, I don't know how long, in a prison in Durban. And he heard that the new president of the country, Nelson Mandela, had issued a decree of clemency. A new president, new constitution, new country, new hope. It was done by kings in the old days and queens in the old days. Now it's the president. And who got the clemency? It would be people who were disabled in prison, who hadn't been guilty of crimes of violence, and mothers of children under 12. And he said, what's going on here? I've got a child under 12, and I don't get the clemency because I'm a man. This is discrimination on grounds of gender, which is prohibited in the Equality Clause. And the case comes to us. The first issue was, can we even investigate the clemency power? In the old days, royal prerogative and a matter, it's outside the jurisdiction of the courts. We decide we're now living in a constitutional democracy. There's no more royal prerogative. Normally, the courts won't interfere. The Constitution intends the president to have a power that's not based on the legal process. It's saying, we know all that's happened, but you're the president and you have a power of grace. It's your decision. And we don't say we are smarter than you, or how can you let this crook out? Presidential choice. But if the president uses a category, and the category is discriminatory, then we can intervene. I was very keen myself to write a judgment in this case for a very stupid reason. I'm looking at lots of literature from all over the world, and especially America. There's lots of stuff about presidential powers. And I see an article, "Can a President Pardon Himself?" And the article is called "Pardon Me." And I loved that title, so I wanted to write a whole judgment so that I could put a footnote with the title "Pardon Me." But in the end, other colleagues were asked to handle it, and there was a division. Overwhelmingly, the judges felt that it was maybe unfortunate, that the phrasing was justified in terms of assuming that women's role is to look after children, and it was perpetuating a patriarchal view of the world. And if he could have found a way of doing it without making that invidious distinction, that would have been better. And in principle, you would want to say the primary caregiver. Well, that's quite a big mouthful of words. But in the case of women, there were 400 women in jail. The number was finite. It was a gesture. In the case of, and normally, overwhelmingly in practice, the women are primary caregivers. Not invariably and not by rule, but that's in practice. And if it included men, you'd have to do investigations in every case. It would have been impossible. You couldn't have managed it. So it was either 400 or nothing. That's a very practical thing. But I remember my colleague Kate O'Regan pushing very, very strongly that if you're looking for discrimination, you're looking at patterns in society, structures, systemic forms of organization where people, for being who they are, women or mothers or black or white or brown or Muslim or Jew, find themselves at a disadvantage. And overwhelmingly men are advantaged. And it's not tracking a pattern of disadvantage. It's actually tracking a pattern of enablement, of overcoming divisions. And I might say, Vanessa mentioned my earlier marriage. My wife, then Stephanie, had been in prison. And I remember telling me afterwards, you know, the women prisoners, their lives were so messed up. They were so wrecked in so many different ways. The only thing they had that had meaning was connection with their children. And there were lots of children with them in there. It wasn't a bond that was similar to the bond, by and large, that men had with their children. So I signed on to the arguments presented by Kate and the others. Justice Krechler, on the other hand, came from a different position. And he said there was discrimination in this case, not against men. The discrimination was against women because it's perpetuating a patriarchal stereotype. Now, of course, if you told the 400 women, Mandela would like to release you, but if we release you, they're perpetuating a patriarchal stereotype, they wouldn't have been very happy to maintain that principle of equality. In any event, we upheld the position of Nelson Mandela. And when I took RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, on a tour in South Africa, and we had a discussion in Cape Town, I mentioned that case, and she really climbed into me, and the students there and staff were very amazed to see a judge speaking sharply to another judge. And she said, no, it's discrimination against the men, the way she saw it. And a lot of her equality jurisprudence in America had been picking up cases brought by men who wanted paternity leave, issues like that, to push the point. In any event, the score now is Mandela 1, Constitution 1. Third case, the South African Rugby Football Union case, SAFU. It was president versus president. And the president of the rugby union, Louis Late, thought he was much more important than the president of South Africa. He was a self-made millionaire. And he was running the union. He played quite an important role in the transition, in opening up rugby and so on. But he was a bully and a boss. And the Minister of Sport then, who'd been in Robben Island, been a political prisoner, said there are problems with rugby, problems of racism and problems about money, and recommended the President Mandela order the creation of a commission of inquiry, which he did. And it's challenged. And it's challenged in the ways that we used to do in the apartheid days, using for every technical point possible. And it goes to a judge from the old guard in the High Court, very, from Afrikaans-speaking background, white person, very thoughtful, well-presented, and the challenge is that no advance warning was given to the president of the Rugby Football Union. Our ultram partem rule should have been given. The president didn't exercise his mind, he just rubber-stamped, and different arguments of that kind. And Mandela tells his legal advisor, I want to testify. And his legal advisor says, don't, please, presidents, don't go into the witness box. He said, I want to show everybody's equal in South Africa. I think he thought with his charm he would win over the presiding judge. And he was very charming. And the presiding judge was very charming when he effectively called him a liar. And he struck down the commission of inquiry, and the matter comes up to us. And we're getting ready to hear the matter, and there's an application by Louis Late's lawyers for 5 of us, 5 out of the 11 hearing the matter, to recuse ourselves. Why? Because we are too close to Nelson Mandela. That's actually a very poignant matter. We were close to Mandela because we had resisted apartheid. The only neutral judges meant they did nothing during apartheid. And it's very awkward. Are there any other judges here? Could you... I don't know if you've ever asked to recuse yourself. And it's very invidious because you have to be a judge in your own cause of being a judge. And it was nasty. In my own case, I was told that Justice Albie Sachs and his wife frequently had lunch with Nelson Mandela. Now, I don't want to say no, as though it's something terrible. And even it'd be like, so what? The fact is I'd been divorced for 10 years. I'd never had lunch with him. I would have tea with him at meetings, National Executive Committee meetings and so on. But I wasn't on social terms with him. And now I'm saying this to the lawyer, and he's coming back at me, and I'm going back at him, and I was actually rebuked by my colleagues for being drawn into that. But we wrote a very important judgment on recusal. We looked at what's done all over the world, and we found objective grounds for saying that the evidence that had been produced didn't show undue favoritism or give the impression to a reasonable person of undue favoritism. So we hear the matter. And we hear the matter and we decide you can't use our old technical principles to try and undermine. We now have a Bill of Rights, guaranteed rights. Before we could only use a little bit of administrative law to upset the apartheid schemes. And we read the evidence, and there was nothing to justify this, not accepting the evidence given by Nelson Mandela. We read it very closely, very carefully. And he said, I did apply my mind, and he mentioned the amount of time he'd spent on it. Mandela was not the kind of person who's going to listen to the Minister of Sport without going into it properly. So we were able now to restore the commission of inquiry. So what's the score now? 2-1. It's 2-1 in favour of Mandela. Next case is 2 more cases. Next case, the pharmaceuticals case. Nothing political about it. New Medicines Act, and it upgrades, it renovates very archaic procedures, principles about control of dangerous medicines. It abolishes the old law. It's signed into force by Nelson Mandela, and these lawyers notice it scrapped the list of prohibited substances. So now there's no control anymore. What to do? He rushes back to court and says, please disregard my signature. I signed it in error. And the court upholds his argument. It was a reasonable error. He wasn't properly advised. He wouldn't have signed it. And it comes to us. Now, we're very worried about that. If you've got a law signed by the president and everybody's acting on it, and weeks, months, maybe years later, you discover the president didn't appreciate its legal value, you can't have rule of law. Is it a legislative act, executive? Well, it's legislative and executive. Some people said, well, necessity. But necessity is a very dangerous doctrine. It's always used to overcome rule of law. So we introduced the principle of rationality. The minimum that any law has to have, it must serve some rational purpose. But this law served no rational purpose because it was destroying control of dangerous opiates and heroin and things of that kind. So on that basis, we struck it down, not withdrawing his signature. It had to go back to Parliament to re-adopt the law and to put in a proper list of prohibited drugs in that way. So what's the score now?
3-1.
Well, it's half. We'll give a half then. Because we didn't accept his reasons. We sent it back, which is what he wanted, the outcome. Okay, the last one is the liquor bill. Now, the President Institution is normally doesn't take part in deliberations and has to sign the bill. But if the President feels that the bill might be unconstitutional, and I don't want to commit an unconstitutional act by signing into law a bill that's unconstitutional, the President can send it back to Parliament. And the liquor bill dealt with, amongst other things, control of liquor, the production and sale and distribution. And the objective was actually to weaken the power of South African breweries that had a 90% control over all liquor in South Africa. Even the liquor that was sold illegally in the apartheid days when black people weren't allowed to have liquor would have been produced by South African breweries. And the provision was made for the granting of liquor licenses, not simply to people who already had the licenses, but to a new class that would be black people. A lot of money to be made from the sale of liquor. It had to be done at a national level, at all levels in the country. And the lawyer said, but you know, liquor licenses is an area that's given exclusively to the provinces. The National Parliament can't pass a law that prevents. The National Parliament said, no, but trade is national. This is trade. And we had to look at the whole tension between a national law, provincial competence, and we decided Mandela was right. He'd sent it back to Parliament. Parliament refused to make the changes. And interestingly, it was the Parliament now overwhelmingly led by ANC, the party he'd been the head of, and he refused to sign. Another example of a president acting in a presidential way. So what's the score now? 3.5 to? 3.5 and 1.5. So 3.5 to Mandela. The next case, it's now President Thabo Mbeki. I knew him as Comrade Tabo from London days, ANC Youth League, a brilliant person, sharp, quick, a strong Pan-Africanist, and a deep thinker, a great strategist who played an enormous role. His handling of HIV for many, many people didn't measure up to his general brilliance. In fact, many people felt it was something that caused them immense pain. So there's a problem in the country now. HIV is rampaging through the country. And ARVs, antiretrovirals, are now being made available, and they can slow down disease and wipe out its impact to quite a large extent. And there's resistance from the government. And there's a body called Treatment Action Campaign of literally hundreds of thousands of people on the ground living with the virus who are now campaigning, first of all, to get rid of the stigma, secondly, to get support, and thirdly, in particular, to get access to ARVs. And they choose their case to go to court very, very carefully. It's women about to give birth, living with the virus. And if they take nevirapine, which is being provided free by Boehringer, which has been agreed to by our scientists as being safe, and being recommended by doctors and yearned for by the mothers, it cuts down the transmission by 50%. Now it's by something like 97%. And the government Minister of Health is saying, no, we don't know about problems down the line of mother and child transmission through breastfeeding and about administration, so we must have experimental sites in only 2 sites in each of the provinces for 2 years. If you've got money, you can buy it. If you live in that area, you can get it. But for 90% of women about to give birth, it means no access to ARVs. 2 years and then policy will kick in. The matter comes up to our court. And I remember the court was packed, small court then, packed with people wearing T-shirts saying HIV positive. Black, white, brown, young, it was like the nation. And Arthur Chaskelson, the head of the court, gives our judgment. And he says that under our constitution, social and economic rights are recognized as enforceable justiciable rights. There's a right of access to health care, and the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources progressively to realize that right. And the state is not acting reasonably on all the scientific evidence that we've got. The TAC, Treatment Action Campaign, wanted us to issue an instruction that the government must. And we decided, no, we don't. We're not picking a fight. We're not picking a fight. We declare what the law is. If government doesn't follow through, then come and get the injunction. And very calm, very technical, legal kind of judgment. And he says the government is obliged to make the antiretrovirals available. Dead silence in the court. We walk out, there's some curtains there. And as we get through the curtains, I hear cheering, and I start crying. And I'm crying because of the impact of HIV on our country. We've got our democracy, we're moving ahead, and suddenly we're being set back. But I'm not crying because of that. I'm crying because I'm a judge. We are judges. We have a constitution. We hadn't even thought of HIV when we drafted that constitution. It was just, I was overwhelmed by that feeling. It's like tears of joy and satisfaction and emotion. Okay, so After that, I tried to go to the score, but I might as well continue. I've got one more case to go. What's the score now?
3.5 all.
3.5.
Both sides, the same.
3.5 equal.
Mandela was at 3.5 and Thabo Mbeki failed the presidency.
2.5. So 3.5 equal.
It's 3.5 each.
Okay, the last case, South Africans will know it. I don't think you'll know. The Nkandla case. Now, I'm not on the court anymore. I'm running to catch my plane in Johannesburg. I've spent a lot of time running to catch planes, and a big, burly, late middle-aged African man blocks me, and he throws his arms around me, and he says, "Thank you. Thank you, thank you." And I say, "It's not me, I'm not even on the court." He just says, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And the decision in that case was about a report by one of what we call our Chapter 9 institutions. Our new constitution has something unique in the world. It has a whole chapter dealing with institutions for the protection of democracy. Independent Electoral Commission, constitutionally protected. The Auditor General, constitutionally protected. It means they're chosen in a public way through Parliament. They can't be dismissed easily. It requires very special measures. There's special protection for them. And other institutions. One of them is a public protector. And the public protector was based on the ombudsman principle. We didn't like the name ombudsman. We called public protector, but with much more power. Not simply to nose around and pick up complaints and report, but to make recommendations. And the issue was, were those recommendations binding or not? And the public protector, Thuli Madonsela is her name. She's now a professor at University of Stellenbosch. And she said, the president of the country, Mr. Jacob Zuma, President Jacob Zuma, is entitled to upgrade his private house to provide security because he's the president. But he has, in addition to providing higher walls and electronic control and guardhouses and so on, he's got a swimming pool and a chicken run and a little arena inside. And my recommendation is that he pays back the money to the government that's been overspent. The High Court said it's only a recommendation. Parliament can accept it or not accept it. It goes to the Constitutional Court. And reading the change that was made in the final text of the Constitution, it's clear it's a recommendation that is binding. How you do it is up to you, but the recommendation is binding. And the Chief Justice then, Mogoeng, wrote a very powerful, strong judgment saying that the President of the country is not simply an official who fulfills important functions. The President must represent the values of the Constitution. And corruption is causing enormous harm in our country. We have to cut it off at the neck. It's a very vivid phrase. He'd been a lay preacher. Now, the President couldn't complain. He had appointed the Chief Justice. So he couldn't say this is somebody who belongs to this party or that party or the other. And it was a turning point in South Africa. It looked as though state capture was just running rampant. And now it was the Constitutional Court, the Constitution, Chief Justice and others making a stand. So what's the final score?
The court wins. Yeah.
Not the court, the Constitution. What's it, why?
4.5 to 3.5.
4.5 to 3.5. And that's the end of my story.
What an enormous joy and privilege it wasn't to listen to Albie Sachs again. So I want us to give another hand and another applause to him, please. And I also want to acknowledge Professor Klopper, who's just walked in after what I know must have been a very exhausting days of interviews. Thank you for being here. It is not the end. Our privilege does not end here. We now have about 20 minutes to engage with Albie Sachs, with Albie, which extends that privilege for us. I'm standing here only because I'm the tallest guy in the room, so I can see where the questions are. But I am going to ask three things of you if you want to ask a question or make a comment. The first is, please to stand up and speak up. There will be roving microphones, so if you put up your hand and you want to ask a question, that will be taken to you so that we can hear you. But we want to see you and hear you if you ask a question, all of us in the room. The second is, please either to ask a question, or if you're going to make a comment instead, at least make it a provocative comment. Albie likes to engage, so I think he would appreciate that. And the third is, because I know that there are very many people who want to ask questions, try to keep it short as possible. If you don't get a chance today, then tomorrow Albie will be speaking with us again from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the council chambers in the George de Toy building in conversation with Professor van Marle. And you can turn up there again and ask a question. But if you do get a chance tonight, please keep it short and sweet. So can I see, are there any questions? So I already see two hands in front here. I think we'll take 3 questions at one time. So we have 2 in front here. I cannot believe that there are not more questions at the back. All right, so let's start with these 2 questions, and I'm sure someone else will put up their hands first. So I'm going to...
Thank you. So the question is, while I was doing my PhD, I did my PhD under Professor Hanson Goulet, and I look at the right to education. I came across your work, which you did in 2000, and I will read that quote. I had to quickly pull up my thesis. And you said, the great battle was not so much over whether social and economic rights should be incorporated, but over how they should be incorporated as justiciable rights in the ordinary way, or a mere directives of state policy. 25 years after, we still battle with the issue of incorporation of economic and social rights. This morning over the television, there was no water in Santin. And I wonder what you think. Has it been done in the ordinary way? Have we had any impact? And what are the challenges and opportunities that we have ahead of us? States continue to hide under the progressive realization doctrine. For how long will this elude us? Do you have any solutions or a magic wand that young scholars like us can now build on? Thank you.
Thanks for the very great presentation. And at this age, that you were able to still recall every detail. The question is, given the trajectory of your life, when these cases come to you in court, do you at any time feel any sense of deprivation from what you have gone through in coming to a decision in any of the cases?
Deprivation. Can you translate?
Tell me?
Given your personal experiences.
Do I feel?
Do
Yes.
you feel that you've been deprived in
Yes,
some way?
okay.
All right. I think as there's no other hand at the moment, Albie, if you have those 2 questions.
Yes, okay, well, Many people criticize our constitution in the sense that it's got lots of beautiful words, and look at the inequalities in this country, look at the racism, look at who owns what, where, look at who can take riding around motor cars for granted, who walk barefoot. You know, a lot of things remain in that sense unchanged. And they say, so the constitution's a failure. And my answer is, the Constitution doesn't provide hospital beds. The Constitution doesn't provide water. The Constitution doesn't provide places at the university school. People do that. But the Constitution creates principles and values. It creates accountable government. One thing our Constitution has done, I was just thinking about this today, living under apartheid, it wasn't just the organized racism. It wasn't just that only effectively white people could vote and exercise power. It wasn't just whites had taken 87% of the land for white ownership. It was all that. It wasn't just black people who had to carry passes. It was maintained through tyranny. It was maintained through laws where people could be picked up and thrown into prison without charge. States of emergency were declared. All the law would be suspended, where people could be tortured to death and there'd be no consequences at all. Books would be banned. We would be told what we could read, what we couldn't read. They had a censorship board, and sometimes things were like ridiculous. There was a book about a horse called Black Beauty, but it was banned because Black Beauty would be inciting to white men to break the law that forbade sex between black and white. What could be published? People were banned, newspapers were banned. We lived in a situation where people in government had immense powers and there was no control over it at all. Now people can speak their minds. South Africans speak their minds. They're critical. You won't find anybody holding back. We can move around freely. There are still huge economic inequalities, and economic capacity gives you power to do lots of things. But at least the law is on the side of the people, and then it's up to the people to use their power under the law to try and get advances. I wouldn't cry too much for the people of Sandton who don't get water. Because they can go to the shop and they'll buy the water. They'll be okay, and they will have boreholes and they'll get water. But it is a great sadness that we have shortages. And what has been shown with electricity, we were having terrible blackouts. Last year, were we having blackouts still? Yes. Okay, so at least one thing has improved since my lecture last year. And that is the lights are on, and we kind of more or less take it for granted now. But the lights are on. Why? Because there was intelligence, there was public outcry, there was organization. People who were failing in their jobs were sacked, and people who were really committed and listening and getting expertise were given positions of authority. And that's got to be an example generally to be followed. Don't blame the Constitution, use the Constitution. Is my response. And social and economic rights all over Latin America now, in all the post-dictatorship, after military dictatorships, people struggled to get rid of military rule, and they said we want rights to education as a fundamental right. We want rights to health as a fundamental right. We want rights to housing as a fundamental right, to security as a fundamental right. South Africa was maybe the first country in Africa, and maybe the first in the former British Empire to justicialize social and economic rights. And there have been cases, the one I mentioned. We now have the biggest antiretroviral program in the world, South Africa. We even survived the cutting off of support from the US because Thabo Mbeki was not happy with the outcome, but he accepted it. Ruling of the court, he must follow it. In terms of, do I feel disappointed? Do I feel the way people often put it, and maybe I was asked this question last year, that say, after all your sacrifices, is this the country you were fighting for? The first thing I say is it wasn't a sacrifice. If anything, I feel I'm the most privileged human being on earth. How many people are there on earth? About 8 billion? Last counting? 9 billion. 9 billion. So here you are, making this bold claim. My white skin gave me the privilege in itself, not out of choosing. My parents resisted it. It wasn't just that I could go to school, have access to education. I could dream, I could imagine. I could imagine if I want to fly to the moon, I can fly to the moon one day. If I want to be a scientist, I can be a scientist. It's the horizon. It was just like unlimited. But then I had the privilege of belonging to a freedom struggle and being accepted. Whenever I went to Johannesburg as a law student, I would stop off at the office of Mandela and Tambo to pay respects to the only black law firm in South Africa. And just by the way, young lawyers, you see, you never know what might turn out afterwards. In event, I was doing it out of respect, and I was always given a cup of tea, be too busy, how's the struggle going? I was made to feel welcome in the struggle. And that was a huge privilege to belong to that movement. But then the privilege to see the success and helping to write my country's constitution. How many lawyers get that chance? And then the privilege of being on the top court that's upholding the Constitution. Wow. And then the privilege of having a competition for a beautiful building. And we put up that building, the Constitutional Court, on the site of the old Fort Prison. We chose that prison, turning swords into plowshares. Made me say I'm the most privileged person on earth. And at a launch of a film on my life called Soft Vengeance, Albie Sachs and the New Constitution, I told that story, and I said, is there anybody else who can claim to be more privileged than myself? And Zach Yacoub put up his hand. And he's my colleague on the Constitutional Court, from a poor Indian family. He's blind, and he rose to be a judge on the Constitutional Court. So there's a competition between Zach and myself, who's the most privileged. So that's why I say no sacrifice. And the sacrifice would have been to do nothing. The sacrifice would have been to make money, get a big car, become rich. That would have been sacrificing my soul, sacrificing everything that's given me the most amazing, most wonderful life. That would have been the sacrifice. Now, is this the country then? And I say, yes, this is the country we're fighting for. What? With the racism, massive inequality, corruption, violence. Is this the country? And I say, yes, it is the country, but it's not the society. There's a difference. We got a country. We got a country with a constitution, with values, with institutions, with rights. We didn't have that before. So we use the country to get the society, because now we can do it. In that short film, The Paradox of Our Lives, we fought with all our passion to get a boring society. We had to risk our lives, imprisonment, torture, assassination, exile. Now we don't need to use violence in that sense, in that way. Now we have rights. We've got to use those rights in an organized way and to bring about the changes that we want. So that's my answer to the question that was put to me. Can I ask if Professor Madlangosi, I don't see him here.
I don't think that he's here now. All right.
I was so hoping he would come. He's a brilliant, brilliant writer, and he's been very critical of the Constitution. And I once phoned him. I said, I'm Albie Sachs. We hadn't met. And I said, I've just seen a video that you produced at the Nelson Mandela University, and the first half of the video wiped out the first half of my life, and the second half of the video wiped out the second part of my life. Are you prepared to be on a steering committee that I'm setting up to help train new historians? And he said yes. He's with the Human Rights Commission, so he would have had a question for me, but he's not here now.
He said those same things this morning again, so he's indeed a provocateur. Unless there is a burning further question, can we take another? There's a hand at the back there. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to ask, I think intellectual property is like an important stream in law, particularly patent law as it regulates rights to exclude from practicing. South Africa, unlike the United States, does not practice patent prosecution. I know recently we started training a few patent prosecution attorneys, but it has taken a lot of time for us to get there. What is your take on how fast we are moving? And is it a neglect on the part of our country to have not done that as soon as it could, given that if you think of patent law, it controls monopoly. People are able to have rights on methods to farm, on inventions, ideas, things that people conceive every day. What's your take holistically?
He says we don't have patent law in South Africa, unlike in the US. Patent law. Mm-hmm. And the question is whether or not it's a lack in South Africa, because there's so much that can be protected through patent law. And what is your take on it? Should we develop it strongly? You want to?
Yes.
Patent prosecutions, in other words, enforcement.
Yes. You don't become a constitutional court without being very adventurous, let me put it that way, and skillful at adapting to different situations. I know very little about patent law. I do remember at one stage being very concerned about the extent to which traditional African knowledge was being vacuumed up by big pharmaceutical companies, and they would buy the roots and the plants and the leaves and so on, pay a small amount, and then patent and get international control. And that's certainly something that I feel we have to defend very vigorously, indigenous knowledge in that sense, indigenous seeds, plants, things that might be useful. The only nearest thing I've got is a case that doesn't answer your question at all, but it's a case that provided us with a lot of fun. It's called the Laugh-It-Off case. And that dealt with intellectual property in logos. So I'm telling you right now, it doesn't really answer your question, but you've given me a possibility of mentioning that case. Justin Nurse was a journalist at Rhodes, and he read a book by Naomi Klein on logos. And she was complaining that logos actually are lies. They don't give you real information about products. They promise you the world. They look after your dreams. So you buy Nike not because it's robust and it's going to help you win races, or even that it's well designed. You buy Nike because it says, let's do it. And she's challenging the power of logos to colonize human beings' minds. So he produces T-shirts, and Standard Bank, he says, he calls it Standard Wank, quicker, faster, better, the other rude things like that. And calling black labor is calling Black Label, the beer, is calling black labor. And instead of being America's lusty, lively beer, it's South Africa's 300 years of exploitation, something like that. So Standard Bank actually buys the T-shirts and gives it to the bank employees and laughs. And the others accepted it. But calling black labor people were very insulted. And they felt they're laughing at our expense. And they go to the High Court, and the High Court issues an injunction. And they go to the Supreme Court of Appeal. And Harmse, who was the expert on intellectual property, says you can criticize the labor practice as much as you like, but you can't use the logo to criticize. And then it comes to us. And I know I was just waiting for it. And for me, it's the whole question of the role of laughter and satire in a democracy. It's not just a right to express your opinions. Laughter is especially important to deal with tense problems. And laughter often deals with painful issues, but they're resolved through laughing, not through fighting, not through locking people up, kicking them, knocking them down. We decide that Moseneki writes for the court, and he says that there's been no prejudice shown to the sales of calling black labor beer. So the freedom of speech issues outweigh the intellectual property right issues, balancing test. I agree with that, but that's not my real reason. My real reason is the importance of laughter in a democratic society. And I opened the judgment by saying, does the law have a sense of humor? And then I quoted Archbishop Tutu, who said the Lord has a sense of humor. Look at Parliament, the South African Parliament today. Now, he said that to disrupt the solemnity of religion. He deliberately chose that the Lord, God has a sense of humor, the Lord has a sense. So if the Lord can have a sense of humor, the law can have a sense of humor. And I wrote, the happiest judgment I've written was on that particular case, saying how important laughter is in a democratic society. And one thing that gives me so much confidence in South Africa is our biggest growth industry is stand-up comedians. And they come from every sector of our society. And that means we're a vibrant, healthy society. We can laugh at ourselves, and we can find the humor in even the most difficult circumstances. And I'm just going to quote one, and this will really be the end of the end of the end, of a black humorist in South Africa who said that we South Africans have lots of firsts. We had the first world transplant, heart transplant, and now we've had the first refugees who fly in chartered aeroplanes, who are met and welcomed in the countries where they fly or put up in hotels. Well done, South Africa, for providing the first refugees like that. Thank you.
This book is a gift to the library. Can you do that?
Friends, colleagues, and if there are any enemies here, you too, please join me in a final round of applause in appreciation for Justice Albie Sachs.
I have a book here for your library. It's the work of Chief Justice Willie Mutunga of Kenya. After they had terrible fighting, elections disputed there, 500 people died, hundreds of thousands refugees and so on. They got a new constitution, a new constitutional court, and a new Chief Justice. And he is a brilliant African Chief Justice, and gives me enormous pleasure. When he had to be sworn in, he refused to be sworn in robes in the court building. He insisted on making a speech, maybe he was sworn in like that, wearing a suit, to the people, to the nation. And he dealt with legal culture, not just law, but legal culture. And now may his wisdom and advice and knowledge be available to the students and staff at the University of the Free State.
We just get organized. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Anthea Rhoda, and I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor. I think we've just listened to an amazing engagement with a number of law cases. I'm not from the law fraternity. My background is in health sciences, but I always enjoy listening to, working in my own mind through the lectures and through the cases, and thinking about how I maybe would have managed and navigated this space. So we're at the point now, I think the second part of the evening, where we're going to move into the signing of the MOU. And in doing that, at this stage, my task is to introduce the Vice-Chancellors that will be engaging in the signing of the MOU. And so we welcome, on behalf of the university, we welcome Prof. Klopper, and I'm going to just summarize your bio, Prof. Klopper. Prof. Klopper, initially when we started, which is our new Vice-Chancellor, not so new anymore. And so Prof. Klopper joined the University of the Free State on the 1st of February in 2025, a globally recognized academic leader with a vast amount of experience in executive leadership. Prof. Klopper's background is also in health sciences, but specifically a lot of work in engaging in higher education leadership. A number of honorary doctorates, and prior to joining the University of the Free State, Prof. Klopper was the Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Stellenbosch University, overseeing strategy, global and corporate affairs. So welcome, Prof. Klopper, that will be engaging with us in a moment. We also have the privilege of welcoming Professor Wahab Egbowole. San was admitted as a solicitor and advocate of the Nigerian Supreme Court in 1985. In 2013, he delivered the 139th inaugural lecture of the university, titled Judex, Hope for the Hopeful and the Hopeless. I must say, after the engaging just with the cases, I am more hopeful this evening. So yeah, Prof. Egbowole also acted as the head of Department of Jurisprudence and International Law and the Dean of the Faculty of Law in the University of Ilorin, and is currently the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Ilorin and the Secretary General of the Association of West Africa Universities. He has a record of winning and managing international grants as well. Prof. Egbowole is a life member of the Nigerian Society of International Law, International Bar Association, and several other relevant international law institutions. And so we say welcome at this stage to our two Vice-Chancellors. And Prof. Klopper, I'm going to, I think, just hand over, if you would like just a few words at this stage, and then I'll hand back to our Program Director, who will facilitate the signing.
Thank you, Prof. Anthea, and good evening, everyone here. Let me first thank Emeritus Constitutional Court Justice Albie Sachs for being here again tonight. And, always when I listen to Justice Albie Sachs, there's something that speaks to one that we are in good hands in this country in terms of our law. If we can keep up the principles that they really fought for, laid down in our Constitution. So really thank you for being here again and having the privilege of being linked to the University of the Free State. And then to my fellow colleague, Professor Ek Bewol, really privileged to have you here tonight. And I must apologize for me getting in a bit late, but we have been engaged in a full day of interviews and making selections for another member of our executive team. But today, here, as we're going to sign this agreement for the University of the Free State, it's a proud and a purposeful moment, as the journey of two institutions that's coming together and making a commitment to advance the African continent through collaboration, knowledge exchange programs, and a shared ambition. You know, often when we engage with universities around the globe, we often go to the north, but we forget about the important collaboration amongst ourselves. And this signing of this agreement is exactly the epitome of that, in terms of two universities on the continent getting together and a commitment towards an Africa higher education strategy and working together. At the University of the Free State, we have committed ourselves to being a globally engaged and yet deeply African-rooted university. And important for us to work with like-minded partners. The university has a proud history of a global reputation and collaboration around the world. Yet it is important for us tonight to sign this agreement because it brings to home relevance, the impact, as well as the integrity of working on the continent that we want to see. So as we move forward, we are reminded that the future of African higher education will shape or will not be shaped in isolation, but it is shaped in solidarity, in working with partners and pulling in the same direction. So I hope that this is just the beginning of a very fruitful collaboration, and that our institutions will walk together on this journey to build an African strategy that will speak to a legacy of excellence, relevance, and indeed a strategy that is bold, inclusive, and transformative, because that's exactly what our continent needs. So thank you for being here and looking forward to the collaboration. Thank you.
Madam Vice-Chancellor, Professor Esther Kolopa, Emeritus Justice Albie, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me start by acknowledging and aligning myself with the very strategic position of Madam Vice-Chancellor that before now, African universities pride itself with collaboration with the North. And today, higher education in Africa will develop, will grow, will move forward if we have the South-South collaboration. And that is why we are excited to get into this arrangement in a way to ensure that staff-student exchange, strategic researches, and exchange of ideas to grow our two institutions with this collaboration that we are entering in today. For us in the University of Ilorin, We appreciate the relationship that has existed in the last 1.5 years with University of Free State. I was there, I think, April 2024, and I had a very engaging discussion with the then Vice-Chancellor, Professor Peterson. And since then, we have had informal relationship. Today, we are formalizing that relationship, and I want to assure you that in spite of more than 100 memorandum of understanding that we have signed with other institutions, this one is really close to our heart because we believe it's going to yield more fruitful engagement for our staff, for our students, for our researchers, for our collaboration. And it is our hope that the two institutions will walk the talk and not just sign MOU that would be in the shelf. We will, from this moment, create a sort of a task force that will ensure that our two institutions start working on whatever we are agreeing to today. It is my pleasure to be here, and I want to put on record the very warm reception that I've received in the last 24, 48 hours that I've been here. I'm just saying, Madam Vice-Chancellor, and this warmth radiates, and it's our hope that this collaboration, this engagement will yield fruitful results for our two institutions. Thank you so very much.
I really shouldn't be speaking. I have a sense that I'm close to a moment of greatness and that I'm not the right person to be here. But it is a wonderful privilege to observe this really positive development. My task now is fairly simple, and that is to guide Vice-Chancellor Egbewole and Vice-Chancellor and Principal Kloppe to that little table over there for the ceremonial signature.
And I have to.
In the heart of Nigeria lies an institution dedicated to excellence, innovation, and progress, where the pursuit of knowledge knows no bounds. It is the University of Ilorin. The university sits on an expansive area of land.
Thank you, Vice Chancellors. Again, a moment of greatness. We're very grateful. Thank you. Initial at the bottom of every page.
Okay.
And
you
then
have to say what we are doing so that people understand.
Oh. My friend, Professor, suggests that I should explain what's going on, which is a bit of a challenge because I sort of thought most of us are law students and law teachers, so we sort of know. So the two VCs have signed, and now the two senior leaders of the faculties are witnessing to confirm that they observed the Vice-Chancellor's sign. So if there's ever a dispute about it, which of course we don't anticipate, but that's how lawyers think. It's the risk management side of law.
Can I do the quick?
Yes.
Are we there now? Oh, you're gonna. Sorry, I
Yes.
don't want to take over you.
No. Distinguished guests, I have the pleasure now to recede somewhat from greatness to a place of comfort and to offer yet another surprise from our friend, leader, and dean, Professor Serge Kamga, and that is a second musical item. As special, and it won't be long, I promise, as special as the first one, but in a slightly different way, because there is a wrinkle which is slightly biographical, autobiographical, in the sense that the performer, Mzo Luwaqa, and I share blood. I'm very proud, not only because of that, but for a more important reason. He is one of our students. He's in the Odayan School of Music, and I love his ringing, operatic sort of voice. So, Mzo, come up, Mr. Luwaqa.
I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. You knew the truth, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to a kitchen chair. She broke your throat, then she cut your hair. And from the lips she drew the hallelujah. 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 Oh, maybe there's a God above. All I ever had from love was how to shoot somebody who outdrew you. It's not a cry you can hear at night. It's not someone who has seen the light. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Friends, colleagues, distinguished guests, I have a fatal conflict of interest in the sense that I'm a proud University of the Free State lecturer, and I am struck by some of what we produce, some of what produces itself under our stewardship. At the same time, I'm an uncle. So, I'm not sure whether what I think is correct or not, that he's an exceptional, extraordinary opera singer. Because in Africa, he's not just my nephew, he's my son. It runs very, very deep. And so, where's Professor Van Marley? Happy birthday to Anna. Happy birthday, dabba dooba. Happy birthday, dabba 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 dabba. Happy birthday, Karen. Another final round of applause, please, for us.
Wow, I think it's what we can share with you. It's not what America's Got Talent, or Britain's Got Talent, or South Africa's Got Talent. It's the University of the Free State has talent. Well done. So well done, and thank you to our students from the Faculty of Law for presenting. I don't want to say entertainment. I just felt it was a bit more. It was more than entertainment. It was great. It was wonderful. So just to end the evening, colleagues, friends, it's a word of thanks to all of us and to all of you that have joined us this evening. A special word of thanks to Emeritus Justice Albie Sachs and to Vanessa that has joined us and once again shared with us this evening. It was like a year ago when we had the inaugural lecture. So thank you. To our Vice-Chancellors from our university, Prof. Klopper, and then to our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Ekbowole, thank you for traveling all the way to visit us and for sharing this week with us. And in that, I also want to acknowledge the contribution of the African Network, I think it's of Constitutional Lawyers, ANCL, for your contribution to this evening, but also to the week ahead. I once again want to just acknowledge Prof. Kamra as the Dean of the Faculty Management. Thank you, Dr. Mathieu. And we have Prof. Dean as well, and then the rest of the management of the faculty for your contributions this evening, and also the contribution, Prof. Brandt, from the Free State Center for Human Rights. So to all of you, students, staff of the Faculty of Law, staff of the University of the Free State, thanks for joining us this evening. I'm sure you have enjoyed the evening, but not only just in terms of the social component, but definitely we've all learned this evening. So thank you very much. Thank you to the uncle as well, the organizing team. Mr. Kanye, thanks to you and your team as well. Thank you.
What a joyous evening. There is a nice way to end these things, and that is with an opportunity to mingle, to enjoy refreshments, which will be served in the foyer. We invite you with great pleasure to join us. I would merely request that we allow an opportunity for Justice Sachs, the VCP, VC, and the senior people to make their way out first, and perhaps also allow them preference as far as the refreshments are concerned. Are they gone? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and our students and colleagues and so forth, I'm delighted to bring this lovely, wonderful, moving, most enjoyable evening and most stimulating intellectually evening to a different conclusion over that side. Please.